In 2011, the year I moved to Los Angeles, white men were 48% of lower-level TV writers. By 2024, they accounted for just 11.9%. The Atlantic's editorial staff went from 53% male and 89% white in 2013 to 36% male and 66% white in 2024. White men fell from 39% of tenure-track positions in the humanities at Harvard in 2014 to 18% in 2023. Since 2020, only 7.7% of Los Angeles Times interns have been white men. Between 2018 and 2024, of the roughly 30 summer interns each year at the Washington Post, just 2 to 3 were white men. In 2025, coincident with certain political shifts, the post-intern class had 7 white guys, numbers not seen since way back in 2014. In 2018, the New York Times replaced its summer internship with a year-long fellowship. Just 10% of nearly 220 fellows have been white men. And later in the piece, he also caveats this even more kind of damningly, that among those white men, there's an extremely high percentage of gay, trans, non-binary, what have you, white men. So kind of non-straight white men.
99.999% are liberal, by the way, too.
99.999% are very left-wing. And then also a significant share of those white men are European, which in various calculations actually don't count as white men. They count as foreign. It's a separate consideration. So if you actually take the sexual dynamic as well, that 10% number probably plummets significantly into the low single digits. And so I guess when I read this, and I saw this. I was in the documentary business, much like you were in academia. I saw this coming in the early 2010s, and again, you see it coming. You see it implemented administratively. You see where the grants, the money, the jobs, the opportunities are going. What's happening in the various industries. And then eventually you figure out how to respond. And I guess that's where I would differ with you. Of course, I don't it's not Jacob Savage's fault, right? He talks about his own journey in Hollywood, his own kind of firsthand account of this. But I actually do think that the implicit attitude and in many ways the tone of this piece are actually part of the problem. Because there's almost an apologetic tone throughout, saying, "Well, I don't really want to mention this. I know it's going to make some people uncomfortable. These are the facts, but don't worry, we're not going to blame we're not going to cast blame in the wrong way. It's really my fault at the end of the day. For even raising the concern." And I actually think that that to me again is one of the weaknesses in an overall very strong piece, which is to say, hey, wait a minute. It's actually okay to be angry. It's okay to lay out the facts deliberately. It's okay to be strong about this. And the fact that you have adopted this kind of prey animal style of communication is perhaps the exact reason, not at an individual level, but more broadly at a social level, that these trends took over these institutions. And I still see it, frankly. I see it in academia. You have these, supposedly conservative or heterodox or even right-wing academics who adopt this pathetic tone that really, to me, is just a signal that these people are easy to abuse, easy to manipulate, easy to steamroll, easy to marginalize. And so I think that, to me, I read it and I say, kind of buck up, be a little stronger here. And the fact that this is the attitude is perhaps one of the reasons why you got run over in the first place.
I mean, that's absolutely true.
Harsh? Is that too harsh?
I don't know that it's too harsh, but it's I think ignoring a certain dynamic here, which is one, people are tethered to their personality types in some kind of more durable and concrete way than I think we'd like to imagine. I think we'd like to imagine that people are very adaptable and flexible, and they respond to different circumstances according to what's best for them in any given moment, and so on and so forth. And when the moment calls for you to stand up and sort of be pugilistic and a fighter and care about your own self-interests and pursue those self-interests while disregarding some of the sort of doubt that might creep in, that anybody who's sort of like smart and capable can just like turn on that switch at any time. And I just don't think that's the case. Like, I have been around these people more or less, not my whole life, but my whole adult life. I got into academia late. I got into sort of literature late. I was not a native to that world. I came in from the outside, and I was a little older. And one thing I observed about these people is that you're selecting for a particular personality type. And there's a very strong filtering mechanism that begins really early. By the time you're like a teenager or so, that, if you're a sort of creative type, the kind of person who's going to end up in a humanities grad school program, I'm sorry, but you're just probably not a fighter. Okay. You're probably not the kind of person who wants to engage in this kind of political blood sport that the moment requires. And that is partly intentional. I think they filter those people out. And what
they
you're
select
left
for
with,
conformists.
Yeah, you're and just people, look, man, I just want to go do my art, okay? I just want to go study, medieval romanticism. I want to go just read these obscure texts and find myself alone in a library where I can just pore over the arcana of academia and be left alone and write my little tracks. And I'm not that ambitious. I just want to carve out this little place for myself, this little niche, and pursue my niche hobby, this obsession, this fixation I have for whatever idiosyncratic reason. I want to be left alone. And that is just the personality type you encounter at these places. They are not equipped for the fight. And to the extent they are equipped for the fight, it's in these very subtle ways. These aren't people who rock the boat. It's like you said, they're conformists. They are selected to be yes men. They are selected to get along. And the moment you raise your head up, it gets chopped off and you get sent away. Okay, that's just what happens at these places. Or once you do have that sort of, maybe you do have an awakening. And I could tell my own story about this perhaps at some point, but then you can say, I got to get out of here, man. This place is not for me. I got to go find something else to do. And what these people require is, aerial support. You need politicians, you need people in positions of influence who are fighters to listen to the problems that are being articulated in these places. And rather than mock or scoff at these people or call them racist or whatever else, is come in and provide that kind of legislative support and the support of the bully pulpit to do something about it. And I will say, Chris, and I mean this like sincerely, you are like the one guy who, at least in the last like 5 years or so, have been the guy who's done that. And you deserve so much credit for this. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of Chris Rufos. In fact, there's like one, maybe two. Okay. And so the question is, where are the other Chris Rufos? I'm serious about that. Why aren't there more Chris Rufos?
I asked the same question, and trying to solve some of these institutional problems have come against this precise dilemma where, fortunately, I think, reinforcements are on the way. I spent last week in part at the University of Iowa, where they just opened a conservative research center, the Center for Intellectual Freedom. Great Brazilian-American professor who's leading that. The governor of the state, came to the event. We had a chance to talk, and then she and I both gave lectures, kind of launching this new center into the world. And so the reinforcements from above are coming, but it also requires the people who have been buried within these institutions to step up and to start taking risks, because the reality is that they're it's difficult. And, I remember back, this was probably 2021, 2022. I was talking to a friend of mine from way back, became a, tier 1 research professor. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing this week? It's good to catch up." And he's like, "Well, later today, I am going to be walking through the tunnels of oppression. I was like, what? And it's like, yeah, it's like they set up these tunnels and there's images and sounds. It's like a living museum. And I suppose I walk through the tunnel and everyone calls me racist because this is a white man, professor.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh. And it's like, yeah. And then the department got BLM shirts for everybody. And, I guess I got to do it. And so I that is like a memory that sticks in my mind because it's like, man, this is how they enforce these norms. And I imagine, like, look, in my ideal world, everyone would say, I'm not doing this. This is not why I'm here. I'm a professor of whatever. I'm a professor of Renaissance painting. Leave me alone. But the reality is that these institutions will only change if they're met with greater force of personality, force of law, force of public opinion, force of civil rights investigations, for example. And so that's where we are. But I think one of my sources of frustration has been precisely the problem you've outlined. It's like, well, where is everybody? Everyone knows this is an incredible injustice. We have people within these institutions. Why aren't they doing anything about it? And even in this period where now it suddenly has become a bit more permissible to discuss this flagrant, open, and by the way, illegal discrimination, there's a sense that if we just, oh wow, that was really bad, hope it doesn't happen again, that would be a sufficient response. And so I don't know. I guess like in my mind, I have some feeling of disappointment, having pushed these issues, now having them come to the forefront. I guess my disappointment is, where was everyone this whole time?